Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Monday, the 22nd day of November 2021. Time for the hurricane outlook and discussion. And spoiler alert, we have no hurricanes to talk about. But we do have Tropical Storm Patty over in the Indian Ocean. We'll talk about that very briefly, and then we'll move on to some other topics related to the tropics, the state of the ENSO, how that's looking. ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, ENSO. And then, water temperatures, that kind of thing, what the CFS is showing. And that's what we're going to do on Mondays. Most every Monday that, as long as I'm not traveling or something, these updates will just basically be once per week until we get something that we really need to discuss. Maybe there's a blockbuster winter storm that's coming and we might need a few more days out of the week dedicated to talking about that. Otherwise, once we get to the off-season, the format will kind of change. We'll look at a little bit of tropics and a lot of other weather. Again, lower 48 weather, severe weather once we get to the springtime. Just keeping you guys in the loop. I am a weather guy. Who cares about a Microsoft account problem, right? Don't you hate those things? These little alerts that'll bother you. It's bad enough to keep the cats and the people and the phone calls and the whatever else out of the office space here, but then you get these pop-ups. Anyhow, I digress. We'll change things over once we get to the off season and want to keep you informed, right? Because, I'm a weather guy. That's what I was going with this. And you're weather people too. You're into the weather. Hurricanes might be the big draw, but we'll talk about other weather. And we're going to use that weather to continue practicing what we do, put our technology to use out in the field during some of these big winter storm events, severe weather once we get to that in the springtime. And then before you know it, it'll be hurricane season again. That is just how fast time seems to go, especially as you get older. All right, and if you're older, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're older than me, you're probably saying you have no idea. All right, it just gets worse. So like I said, in the Indian Ocean, here's Tropical Storm Patty. No big deal, no big problems out there with this. Here's the track map from it, from the University of Wisconsin, as it moves along and eventually just dissipates over time, well south of Indonesia, which is right here. This is the northwest corner of Australia, so only of concern really to shipping interest out that way. And on our tracking chart, we don't have it plotted. Maybe we'll do that in the future. Global tropical cyclone activity. We've piled a lot onto our programmer Will Woodgate over the last year and a half, and he has done some extraordinary things. So eventually we may look at doing global tropical cyclone tracking, sure. But for now, I'll just tell you, this is where Patty is located. And again, it's going to move off to the south and west with time and not be a problem to anybody. But that's it. That's the only thing to talk about storm-wise in the tropics of any real significance. And even Patty there, not that significant. Trade winds blowing nice and brisk across the western main development region into the Caribbean Sea. And then those trades are opposed by stronger upper-level winds coming against the grain, so to speak. No areas of concentrated convection, even the eastern Pacific. Limited thunderstorm activity at best along the intertropical convergence zone. And that's about it. Otherwise, it's lower 48 weather stuff, which we'll get to in more detail in a minute. But you can see there's northwest flow coming down out of Canada. You got the front ahead of it where the air is kind of smushing together, if you will. Not a meteorological term, smushing, I assure you. But it's like a snowplow. That dense, heavier air pushes up against the warmer, more unstable air, and you wring it out. And you got some showers through here, a few heavier rain episodes, but nothing major, no big-time storms as we look forward to the travel period coming up. I mean, look, everything to the west of this front, most of the lower 48, very, very nice right now for travel by any means that you wish. A very good week ahead, generally speaking. So, like I said, in the off-season, and we're not quite there yet, even though nature cut things off, the off-season began really at the end of September, from nature's perspective. Globally, we've talked about that. It's a very weird thing, just cut off pretty much all significant tropical cyclone activity, especially these last 2 to 3 weeks. Nothing to speak of in the western Pacific, nothing in the eastern Pacific once we had Pamela and Rick. Had a couple others there, but, it's just been quiet and very oddly so. So what we'll do is take a look at other parameters. What do we know? Well, we don't know why that happened, exactly why things shut off. So let's just open up the window, so to speak, and look out there and see what's going on. And we can see the Atlantic down to the equator, quite a bit warmer than average. Subtropical Atlantic, definitely warmer than average, pretty much right where it should be in between. And then this really sticks out in here, the La Nina, very, very prominent. Some of these purples in here, literally knocking on the door of 4 to 5 degrees Celsius below the long-term 30-year average, I think is what it is. And that is remarkable. We are absolutely in the, I don't want to say the grips because it makes it sound like it's bad and scary. It does change the way the weather in the short-term climate period behaves when you cool off that giant of an area of the Pacific, sure. But it's just really interesting, and it's very, very prominent, and it's going to be a while before this dissipates and moderates to become closer to normal. And that's what we're going to look at going forward, all right? So the imbalance is still there. The Atlantic, quite a bit warmer, the Pacific, quite a bit colder, and yet, between that imbalance, we really weren't able to squeeze out any significant hurricanes since Sam, and that's puzzling. We'll be figuring that out over the coming months, I guess. Not that anybody's complaining, right? That's a good thing. If they are going to happen, you're glad to have me there to be there in person, but if they don't happen, exactly. It's kind of like being a superhero. No need for Batman. I'm just saying, you follow the idea there, right? All right. So anyway, let's just stick to the topic here. Where is all of this headed? Well, this gives us a clue right here. The CFS V2, this is updated every single day. And this is where we are. This is the forecast mean through here. And eventually we reach some kind of a bottoming out around January. And then water temperatures at the subsurface should start to come up, generally speaking, towards warm neutral, slightly warmer than neutral by July. That's the overall thinking of this particular model, the CFS V2. These are all the ensembles here. That's your kind of envelope. The blues represent the most recent runs. The reds are the earlier runs, further back in time, as it were. So, yes, we'll see where this goes. But, we don't see anything that's just screaming El Nino. And yes, we're months and months away, but this is something that we will look at in the off season about once per week, roughly every Monday, right? So again, looking at this is the actual sea surface temperature profile of the Gulf of Mexico. Your shelf water areas, generally pretty chilly, upper 60s to lower 70s on the Fahrenheit, and you're talking 19 to 22 Celsius, okay, depending on how you look at it. But farther out, at least I got that right, distance-wise into the Gulf, yes, there's your 26 Celsius isotherm or line of equal temperature. So, it's pretty warm. And you look and see, well, it's pretty warm out there. Is it warmer than it should be? And if we look at the Gulf of Mexico, yes, it is generally warmer than average. Nothing alarming, nothing ridiculous where you're like, oh man, something's really out of whack. You can see the loop current looks more like a ribbon. Those ribbons that people put up for all kinds of different causes. It's kind of like what it looks like. But nothing, again, that's got everybody up in arms. Like, the entire Gulf of Mexico is 5 Celsius above average. That would be a problem. So far, that is not the case. But the loop current is pretty prominent. You can see it represented here and in the anomaly chart. And again, this will fuel winter storms and severe weather season when that comes around next year. And we'll just wait. We'll wait and see how. Here's one good thing to look at. Over the winter, the less fronts that come down, if we don't have any major Arctic outbreaks, this is going to stay warm. If you don't blow cold air across it to mix it up, it'll gradually cool off just because the sun angle changes. But we're only a few weeks away. I saw a tweet about it, that eventually we're going to start adding daylight again. We're not there yet. So the sun's going to start, gradually heating things up once we get past, let's just call it about a month from now. And it's probably shorter than that down there in the Gulf. It just depends on where you are on the planet latitudinally. Because remember, we are a sphere and not flat, just so you know. So things will change. But until then, until that incoming solar radiation increases again, you have to have fronts that come down, cold air advection that just blows across and mixes it up, kind of like you blowing across a hot cup of coffee or tea or hot cocoa or whatever, to cool it off. If that doesn't happen, your beverage stays hotter longer. Same thing with the Gulf of Mexico. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens, how that shapes up over the coming months. And we can track it in real time here daily, and from the anomaly perspective once a day from this graphic as well. Same thing off the East Coast and Mid-Atlantic states. It's interesting. Look at the lack of gradient through here. That's really interesting to me. A very uniform, large area of this purple right through here that I'm kind of filling in with the black color there. And the gradient is just not that steep. And by gradient, in this case, the difference in temperature over distance. That is the gradient, the temperature gradient, not that steep right now. In other words, all right, Mark, what do you mean? The water on the north side, the water temperatures on the north side of this gradient right here, where all these lines are, these isotherms, lines of equal temperatures, it's not that much colder here than it is here by such a margin that you got a lot of lines crammed together and it's basically a line of black through there. Now that could change as we get into the winter, we'll see, but it's really interesting, and I won't say that this is alarming, but it certainly raises my eyebrows a little bit because, look, that is way warmer than it should be. You know, we're talking, if we look down at the scale at the bottom, 4 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than it should be up here in the Northwest Atlantic. Off the Mid-Atlantic, off of Cape Cod, off of Canada, Atlantic Canada, the Gulf of Maine, and that is problematic, and that is also reflected in the actual temperatures here, that you don't have all of this ridiculously cold water. I mean, 12 Celsius, which is what that says. That's too cold for me, but you see what I'm saying? This is showing up now in the temperature gradient. That's not even that steep yet. So any big winter storms, especially those Miller Bs that come across and redevelop and go up this way and maybe get blocked and hang around, they're going to have warmer water to work with, so that will help them be deeper. And those temperature contrasts in the atmosphere, the baroclinic processes, I think we have a potential for some strong winter storms this year. And that's not just for New England or the Mid-Atlantic, but for our friends in Nova Scotia and Southeast Canada as a whole. Seriously. So that'll be something to watch as we go forward. The hurricanes didn't take the heat out, so something else will have to, well, I say will have to, doesn't have to do anything. You know, maybe it just slowly goes away. But I think we're going to get some good storms up through here. When I say good, I mean impactful, and we got to watch for them. Not necessarily good, you know, they could have some impacts. We got to watch out for that, be ready for it. All right, so nothing in the tropics, as we talked about, showing up on the vorticity signature. Most of the concentrated energy is up here in these mid-latitude storms, and we'll keep pointing that out throughout the season. And then you'll see once we get back into the spring and early summer, this will start to light up more, and this will get, you know, less prominent as we go through time. All right, moving on along, lower 48 weather specifically, that segment, a nice clean map. You just don't, I mean, that's great, especially for such a big travel week that we have ahead of us here. Today is Monday. We got people traveling. Schools are usually Monday, Tuesday. They let off Wednesday. Some are done today. Depends on the college, the university, the public school system, the independent school district, whatever. But this is a big travel week, that is for sure. So air travel, not too shabby. From a weather perspective, we got all kinds of other problems. And I shouldn't laugh at all because it is a nightmare for some people. So at least the weather won't be a big issue on a big scale. Regionally, yes, you can have some problems somewhere, some hub. You never know. But on a large scale, this is today's map. I'll show you the GFS in a moment. But on a large scale, the weather's looking pretty good in the lower 48 as we move throughout the week ahead. And if we look at the radar animation here from Mark Nissenbaum at Florida State University, really, this is pretty darn good. The only area is that frontal system that I was telling you about, and none of these reflections, or the reflectivities, if you will, in the radar are very heavy. So just light rain, kind of messing up the roadways a little bit, making them slick. You got to be careful. You travel on I-95. Even that's starting to get cleared. But again, the big deal here is, hey, it's a nice travel period coming up. Some snow showers in the northwest, some off the lee of the lakes, as you'd expect. The lakes are warmer than average. Cold, dense air moving across, and you got that whole lake effect machine. We'll talk about that more later when it's time. when we get a real big event. I mean, even look right here. I wish that Mark Nissenbaum would make a radar, like he does, for where you can zoom in, like on Florida or whatever, when there's a hurricane, because it's just so nice. But you can get the idea. The cold air blowing across Lake Ontario here, depositing some of that moisture over in the Tug Hill region. Nothing ridiculous, nothing crazy yet. That'll come later. And then some moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest, but still nothing too significant as we go forward. So the forecast as we move through time, this is the GFS, basically showing the lower 48. And on this is nice because you can see the precip blues. Yep, that's frozen, green, and then the color shades are different variations of how much precip has been falling. And in this case, it's millimeters per hour. And the mean sea level pressure, pretty good low pressure area up there in Canada. But generally high pressure elsewhere across the lower 48. So not a bad travel week, as I have stated many times so far, trying to be positive here. Deep trough in the east, but that moves off. General high pressure in control for the most part. There's Thursday morning. A little bit of rain through parts of Texas, scooting northeast, what we call overrunning moisture on the back side of this high, which is right there. So you come around the back of it, clockwise flow, funneling in that moisture, rides up and over the colder, denser air, and you get sort of this showery, gray, like just go to sleep all day kind of weather. Some people will be traveling on Thanksgiving through there, but again, no big storms to just ruin everything, and that's a good thing. But locally, you got to be careful. The lee of the lakes, maybe there's some lake effect snow, and up here in the Pacific Northwest, maybe some travel problems over at, what is it, SeaTac they call it up there, the airport. Eventually I'll know all of my identifiers, but yeah, pretty good for travel. This is day 4. This is Friday morning when everybody's going, oh man, I ate too much. Maybe some northwest flow snow, and that's a thing. You get those northwest snow events, the northwest flow, banging up against the mountains there, the Appalachians. The air comes up and over, you get orographic lift, you wring out the moisture, and it's cold enough this time of year for some snow. So the resorts will like that. Finally out to day 5. Again, the pattern looks pretty good overall through the weekend as people travel and do whatever they're doing to round out the month of November. And there we are a week out from today, almost the last day of the hurricane season, and it doesn't look too bad. Obviously the tropics nice and quiet, and even at that time frame, the lower 48, no major storms. So this gives me time to work on other things. And I want to talk about those other things real quick before I let you go. Working on the Hurricane Highway Season 2. I am behind on that. I just got busier this year than I thought I would be. And I produced the entire thing generally by myself. And that's not bragging nor complaining. It is just a statement of fact. So it takes a while putting together a show. Virtually a TV show, basically, to the best of my ability, and I'm going to continue to work on it. The next episodes coming up are Isaias, and then we have Laura, and then we have Sally, and Delta, and Zeta, and Ada in there, all from last year, Beta down on the Texas coast. That's 2020. So I'm also going to start shooting some stuff, these interviews that I do, to also cover 2021. So I'm going to be working on that now that things are quiet and I can travel more. And we know that we're not going to have any hurricane issues to worry about or any big winter storms. So I'm going to work on that Friday into early next week. Continue to crank out these episodes. They are already on Patreon, the 4 that are finished. We already have 4 from Season 2. I think I made the very first one public. I think I should do the second one, too, to get us started. Maybe I'll do that this Friday. Something to think about. And then I got the podcast, this long format. It's not Joe Rogan length, but getting close sometimes. He does some long podcasts, doesn't he? It's called Stories from the Hurricane Highway, and it is exclusive for our patrons. And I have to resume that. I say I have to. I look forward to it. Producing those episodes. We're going to start with 2006. It's basically a chronology of my career, how I started and where we are going through time. Kind of a look back, like a book on tape, if you will. So that podcast resumes the first Wednesday of December as well for our patrons. And then just generally thinking about what we're going to do for winter weather coverage, experimenting with some new things with our map, with our technology, trying to move everything forward and then before you know it, it'll be 2022, and we'll only be a few months until hurricane season again. You see, time moves fast, especially if you're doing stuff and you keep them productive and you're just keep going, keep moving forward. Moving is living, and that's what we're going to do. We'll do it together, and I will use that to wrap everything up today. How about that? A positive note. I like doing this with you guys. It's great having you. I'm thankful for that as we head into Thanksgiving, a good segue into that as well. If you're traveling, be safe out there. At least the weather won't provide too much of an issue for you anywhere, so that's good news there. All right, probably do an update Wednesday just to keep everybody, hey, here's what's happening, and then maybe next Monday. And then this will start to become a once-a-week thing or so in the off-season. All right. Good to have you around. I appreciate it. Like I said, I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again around midweek.